I'd like to invite on stage one of the principal authors of this evaluation, Mike Gualtieri, VP and Principal Analyst at Forrester Research, to discuss his perspectives and where the market is going. Please join me in welcoming Mike. Mike, thank you for joining us.
Good to be here.
Why don't you start by introducing yourself and maybe your research over at Forrester?
Sure. So what I do is basically talk to all of our clients, who are the largest companies in the world, about AI. But I also talk to the vendors as well. So I cover the AI market, and I cover it in three primary ways. I cover AI infrastructure, which is sort of that bottom layer, the hardware layer. I cover AI platforms. You just displayed the wave up there. And I also cover AI foundation models. So I've been doing that for about 10 years.
And I understand that the AI ML platforms, which started as a wave about 3 years ago, also has a longer history.
Well,
can you tell us a little bit about that evolution?
Yeah, so 10 years ago, the origin of this wave, it was called the data mining wave, right? So we were looking at data mining tools. The market evolved a little, and then we called it the data mining and predictive analytics wave. And then the market evolved, and then we called it the predictive analytics and machine learning wave, until finally we got to the AI platform wave 3 years ago. And it reflected a change in what the buyers, the market, the enterprise buyers wanted. And before, it was really about tooling, right? The key buyer or influencer of the buyer were data scientists. So it was all about what data scientists were. So when I would evaluate these platforms, there were criteria in there like how does the tool impute values? Very detailed things that a data scientist would want. But as it became clear that AI became strategic, well, now all of a sudden you had enterprise architects involved, you had technology leaders involved, you had business involved as well, and so the needs changed, and so the wave changed, and how we evaluate platforms changed, and so now it went from kind of like, well, what does a data scientist need, to what does a CEO want, and so the shift focuses from all of these detailed technical features. I still have a few because they're important, and you displayed some nice ones up there. But with a focus on business outcomes, and that's how we approach the AI platform.
That's, I think, a really good lesson about evolution and how, frankly, the business leaders are bringing this forward, bringing technology and platforms forward. Can you talk just a little bit more about how you do that evaluation? You talked a bit about how you structure, but also when you're evaluating and how you engage the buyers here, many of which are in this room, what is the way in which you're both assessing what's most important and most strategic for them?
Yeah, the purpose of this research is to help those buyers make a decision, right? So understanding what their needs are, and I would say there's three primary needs. The first driver that we look at is the business outcomes. What business outcomes can they expect, and how quickly can they get those? The second one is, what are we dealing with now, right? There's a legacy of, sometimes a bank through acquisitions might have a portfolio of literally thousands of applications that are under management. They might have 6 wealth management systems, for example. Those systems aren't going anywhere, right? So how do you layer AI on top of that? So it's got to have those integration points. And then the third primary characteristic is supporting the extended team. I mentioned before that all we cared about 10 years ago was, how does this help data scientists? Well, now it's, how does it help data scientists? How does it help developers? How does it help business people? How does it help IT ops? How does it help the entire AI team, the extended AI team? And especially in abstracting the complexity of using the platform. And you were showing some features up there that we're using AI to actually help abstract some of the complexity, and that's made my job more complex, actually. Because with LLMs, now we've got all of these platforms that are actually using AI to help you create AI, and it's just the beginning.
Yep. Well, we'll come back to that capability in just a second. One of the other things that I've had the opportunity to see with your research is that you're also pulling forward in terms of what applications really mean. Because they're not just templates and accelerators in the view that you've had. Can you talk a little bit about what that has meant and how businesses should be thinking about it?
Yeah, it's also transformed the way we look at that, because sometimes we would look at how many, I'm going back a few years, right? We'd ask the vendor, well, how many applications do you have? Or we'd call them solution accelerators, right? And you'd sort of count them up and you'd say, well, this one has 30 and this one has, But all of them aren't created equal, though, as well, right? Because some of them are sample code. Some of them, it's like, well, we had some customer and we had a services team just create a little sample, and then they call that an application. I mean, it's somewhat of a head start, but not really, right? So the buyers demand a more finished application. And again, this ties back to the expectation that they're going to get business outcomes, that they're going to get ROI. So we switched our evaluation of just counting how many apps that they've said to making it more of a strategic aspect. How many completed applications? Now, they have to be customized, and they have to work and integrate on top of that complex technical environment. But that's become one of the critical factors now in evaluating these platforms. Not to say they don't need to create custom. They absolutely do as well.
Yeah, our perspective, of course, is that building is one piece, maintaining is another.
Yeah.
And so when we think and engage with our discussions with customers, it tends to be about, let's obviously solve a problem that gives you value today, but let's ensure that this thing, without having to do too much more work, continues to provide you value in 2 years.
Yeah, and I absolutely agree with what Jim said this morning, too, about you have to master your own AI, right? And you were showing a demo there where linking into your own enterprise data, because you're not going to, solve that stockout situation with some generic model, right? It's got to be that data. And something else Jim said was about imagining AI everywhere, right? And that's also what's changed, I think, in the C-suite in most companies. It's like, you know what? Maybe we can't fully imagine it. Some companies can, but we need to imagine it. And we need to have an expectation that AI is going to be used throughout the enterprise. So how does that translate to a platform as well? And when I get more technical, I think about technical debt as well, because I've seen a change in the market too, right? Because I've been doing it for a while, and there's some companies that basically went from calling themselves a data science platform to just saying, now I'm an AI platform. But they're still a data science platform, and what they're doing is that they're providing more and more tools for data scientists to create more and more spaghetti code. That's not a real platform, right? So the capabilities of a platform have to be abstracted, and there have to be sort of these guardrails so that all of these applications are developed in a similar manner so they can be maintained.
Yep. An abstraction platform with guardrails is a really good way to put it.
Yeah.
Switching just a little bit, we talked about AI interacting with AI.
Yeah.
And I've been following your research. I know many of the people in this room do as well. And your approach to understanding and thinking about agentic AI has been, I think, a little bit forward-leaning for most and really informative. Can you talk a little bit about how you came to this perspective and where you think this might be going?
Yeah, so before Gen AI, right, and then Gen AI came out, and everyone said, oh, there's all these Gen AI startups. And they're saying, and everyone at Forrester is saying, oh, we're going to do a Gen AI wave? Well, what about the AI platform? So you're telling me that all of these AI platform vendors aren't going to do Gen AI? They're just going to say, well, yeah, we do AI, but we do the old AI. We don't do the new AI. Well, they all stepped up and did Gen AI in a way that was much more sophisticated than any startup did it. Same thing's happening now with agentic AI, It's like you're seeing all these little startups saying, all right, we do agentic AI. But the AI platforms, you can't be an AI platform with also saying that you don't do agentic AI. Now, agentic AI is multi-step AI. It can be stateful. It probably is stateful. But agentic AI, and I think this is more what you're referring to, can also be used to help create those applications or customize those applications. So we have to look at both of those. But I think the impact of agentic AI on an enterprise is going to be huge, because this is now a multi-step process. And if you take any business process that any company has and you take the steps in that process, before agentic, AI often looked at one step in that process and optimizing it. Look, we just optimized this one step and we saved $50 million. That's great. What if we look at that entire process, right, and not just optimize at each step, but optimize across the entire process? That is huge economic value if you can pull that off.
And I'm sure that's the guidance you give all of your clients in terms of thinking about optimizing the entire process. Where do you think adoption is today? And what would you encourage those here to think about in order to adopt potentially faster?
I think adoption, I think people are investigating it. I don't think adoption is because this is really a term. I mean, we've been following it for a long, long time, and so have you, but most of the market is just beginning to understand this term. So it's early days. But one of the things I would say, I advise companies all the time, it's like, look, you're going to hear definitions of agentic AI that say, oh, we have this agent here and it just figures out your process and it uses tools and it will optimize your process. That seems a little scary to just unleash something on a process. Instead, it's better to start with a process you trust, because that process is how you govern whatever that business outcome is. And it would be better to start with agentic to manage that one process that you already understand. Because if you can make that process that you do have more efficient, that's where your initial value. Think about optimizing that entire process after you've optimized the process that you already have.
Where do you think all of the business users combined with the technical and IT teams, how should they be interacting? Like, what is your view of efficiency and gains to not only define those processes and optimize them?
Well, one of the most fortunate things that I think that has happened with AI is that technology leadership is now involved. They haven't delegated this to some data science team, right? Because I would hear all the time, well, we built the model, but it took 9 months to deploy it. And I would also always ask, why? Why can't you just deploy it this weekend? It should be simple enough. And the answer usually was because they didn't think of everything. They didn't think of the integration. They didn't think, So one of the fortunate things that's happened is now people understand a application delivery process. You've got sort of the mature part of the organization, the IT ops, the enterprise architects, the software development teams are now involved in that entire life cycle. So they know how to use a platform for that entire life cycle. And, getting back to your question, they know how to engage business, or they should. They know how to engage business and what the expected outcomes are. So business people should be able to have tools in that platform that allows them to be hands-on. And they should have tools that allows developers to customize. And they should have tools that allow data scientists to tweak models. So tools across the entire team.
So, if I were to bring it all together from that perspective, multiple users, technical, less technical, business, more technology, interacting with capabilities, but you need to enable the abstraction, reduce the complexity, help them along the way. Where AI can do that, even better.
Yeah, if you think of like three things, if you think of that, meaning tools for the entire extended team, and then you think, I have a messy enterprise environment that is not going away, so I need a layer on top of that. And then if you think, I need platform capabilities that abstract complexity so that I'm not creating technical debt. when I build all these applications, then that's a good starting point.
And focus on the applications, focus on the value.
Yeah.
I imagine a lot of that. The additional piece that we often see from a value perspective is kind of thinking about where to start. So you talked about business processes, but have you heard or have you seen where the guidance might be start with something that you definitely know very well, but how might you guide if we have customers across industrial, we have financial services, we have health, life, and life sciences. All of their business processes are going to be very different. There's varying levels of tools and capabilities out there in the market. How do you advise them to get going to capture value? What's the first thing that they want?
Well, first of all, don't walk before you run. Like, you could walk before you run like 3 years ago, because that was an experimental phase, but this is moving fast. So what that means is it's really not time to experiment. It's time to find one of your most critical business processes, find a step in that business process that's well understood from an industry standpoint. In other words, well understood meaning it can be solved. You got a nice list up there that has, is it 131
Yep.
or, yeah, I'm not sure. But so start with something that people know that they can implement and implement that critical step in an existing business process. You don't have to change the business process. You just have to find a step that you can optimize and then just go with that.
Well, we're near time. Mike, thank you for your critical and important research. I'm excited for the next wave.
Yeah.
And thank you for engaging us right now in this discussion.
Sounds good. Thank you.